Hello, everybody, and welcome to Embedding Tableau, the whys, whens, and hows. My name is Michael Kovner. I'm a product manager for embedded analytics at Tableau, and with me I have Ong Gao, who's a software engineer on our developer platform. This is my 6th Tableau conference, and I have two of my most favorite things about Tableau conference to tell you about. The first is this developer track, which allows me to get in front of people like you and talk about some of my favorite subjects: APIs, integration, and most of all, embedded analytics. So I'm excited to be here today. My second favorite thing about Tableau Conference is having software engineers come and talk about the subjects that they work on day in and day out. And that is why I'm excited to have Ong with us on the stage, who's going to teach you about the REST API, which is the feature where he spends all of his time. Ong will be joining us back in a little bit to tell you about the REST API. So until then, thank you, Ong. So what is the purpose of this session? Well, it's an introductory session to teach you what is embedded analytics. What do we mean by that here at Tableau? What are common use cases, and how can you put this into effect with your Tableau server deployment for your internal or external users? And finally, what are the basics in getting started with embedded analytics? We'll teach you about the 3 pieces of functionality that will help you get started with embedded analytics. And finally, where can you go to dive deeper and start building this stuff out? Again, we'll introduce you to these APIs, but it'll be a high-level introduction. We're going to show some code, but for the non-developers in the room, we're going to keep it high level, just so you get a feeling of what these APIs are for, and so that you can go to other sessions the rest of the week or get home and know where in our documentations and our GitHub pages where you can find out more about these APIs. Great. So what is embedded analytics? The easiest way to explain it is to give you a quick demo. I always like to keep demos with things that are real, used by actual companies or organizations. So here we have a great example of embedded analytics by Purdue on their website. Purdue, of course, is a university, and they started collecting data about students, about enrollment, about graduation. That was useful to them internally, but then they realized people want to know this information. It's public data. Mothers of prospective students or prospective students themselves or other organizations in the public space could find this value useful. So Purdue had built these insightful dashboards and wanted to get them out to the world. How were they going to do that? Were they going to give everyone who might want to see this data a login to Tableau server? That really wouldn't be feasible. And they wanted to put this insight right where people who are learning about Purdue are already going, on their purdue.edu website. So they built this purdue.edu/data digest. Just looking at it briefly, there's really no hints that this is Tableau. A user who navigates here from the main purdue.edu webpage would simply see information. They wouldn't realize they're looking at Tableau. They've maintained the look and feel of their main webpage and branded it with the Purdue colors. A user sees all of the possible dashboards that they are allowed to see, and they don't have the rest of the Tableau server functionality to look into projects and things that they may not know about. So they click on one of these Tableau dashboards, and again, once they click that link, they're still inside of the data digest page. There still is no indication that this is specifically a Tableau visualization. However, it is an interactive visualization, so they can hover and find information or filter, just like any other Tableau visualization. And finally, these buttons up top are actually HTML and CSS buttons that live outside of the Tableau frame, and yet they are able to control what's happening inside of the visualization. So that's an example of embedded analytics. But really, the use cases follow a wide spectrum of use cases, internal, external, in existing apps, in custom-built apps. So I want to talk about a few of those. One of the most common use cases that takes a Tableau server deployment to the next level is embedding in existing internal applications. Your organization may subscribe to Salesforce, and your salespeople may go every day to learn information about their contacts, their accounts, and their opportunities. Or marketing people might find out more about their marketing campaigns inside of Salesforce. Embedding visualizations right inside of Salesforce means that people will get the information. First of all, it will just drive more usage. People who are going to Salesforce every day will have more insight into their opportunities, their accounts, their marketing campaigns, because they have a Tableau interactive dashboard right inside of Salesforce. And finally, it'll be context specific. If I'm looking at an opportunity for Acme Inc., my dashboard can be filtered to Acme Inc., so I get the data for the context of where I was already working. This is not specific to just Salesforce. You can do this with SharePoint, which is very common. Any type of internal wiki. We use a Confluence wiki internally at Tableau, and we embed in all three of those: SharePoint, Confluence, and Salesforce. But no matter what, you probably have some kind of internal information system that could be augmented by the dashboards that you or your Tableau team is already building. The Purdue example we just showed is an example of a custom portal. This is a growing use case of embedded analytics. This is common when you want to simplify the experience for your users, and it can be done internally or externally. Sorry, let me take a step back. What do I mean by internally or externally? Internally is for your employees, the employees at your organization. Externally is for people providing data and dashboard to the wider world, customers, partners, or just the general public, as in the Purdue example. So you may have a group of users who want a simplified Tableau experience. I don't need all of the information about Tableau server. I don't want to learn a new system. I just want the access to my 10 dashboards in one simple application. This is great for internal usage. In fact, we have something called MyAlpo, which does this here at Tableau. Salespeople and other people in the organization can get a very streamlined experience into just their top 5 or top 10 dashboards. But it's very important for external use case to have these simplified portals where you can maintain your branding and your look and feel of your organization as you provide insight to your partners and your customers. This kind of external use case, again, is exploding as a way for people to find additional value. One large retailer of hardware decided we're collecting all this data about usage patterns or purchase patterns of our customers. That's great for us, and we're building these great dashboards which are making sure our stock supplies are correct, that we have the right products, and our salespeople are doing the right things on the floor. But then they realized our partners, our suppliers, could find value from this too. What are the top hammers that they're selling? Don't you think the manufacturer of that hammer would want to know that? And so by providing a simple external deployment of Tableau server like this, they can maintain their branding and increase their relationship with their customers and partners. Another important use case is what I call Tableau as a component in a web application. What do I mean by that? Well, software companies, in this case, a made-up company called Industrix, provide a lot of services to their customers. Industrix, you can think of, they provide software that allows people to manage their supply chain. And you can go into Industrix.com, you log in, you can go see their blog, you can go manage your supply chain in there. And many software applications like this just need an analytics component to take the usage to the next level. And so instead of being the front and center main component of the application, as an example of Purdue Data Digest, a lot of software companies want an analytics component. And they can leverage Tableau, the ease of use of Tableau, and embedded analytics to just create a highly interactive, highly insightful, and easy to build analytics component. And finally, mobile apps. If your company has a mobile app for whatever reason, internal usage, external usage, that mobile app can probably do a lot of things. And one thing that you might want to give access to your mobile users is Tableau dashboards. And you can do that simply by embedding dashboards with this embedded analytics platform inside of your mobile apps. That's the why and when. Now let's talk about the how. So it's beginning to be fall. Maybe not here in Vegas, but back home in Seattle, it's definitely starting to feel a lot like fall. And every fall, my wife loves to start making chicken noodle soup. In fall, we probably have it once a week. If you've ever made chicken noodle soup, or probably even if you haven't, you know there are 3 obvious ingredients. You have your chicken, obviously. You have your noodles, obviously. And you have your broth. Similarly, for embedding Tableau, there are 3 distinct but important capabilities that act together as what I call the recipe for embedding Tableau. The first, which you might call the meat of the recipe, is the embedding. Is the JavaScript API, which allows you to take a single dashboard and embed it inside of a single web page. It also allows you to create custom interactivity, custom buttons that control your dashboards. The noodles, which aren't the main thing that people think about when they think of chicken noodle soup, but still very important, is the REST API and Tableau's server client library. The REST API can do a lot of things for a lot of different use cases with Tableau Server, but specifically for embedded analytics, it allows you to make sure that your web application is synced, has all of the users and content synced with Tableau Server. If someone signs up for your application, they also need to be added into Tableau Server. The REST API allows you to do that automatically. Similarly, you saw in the Purdue.edu example that you might want to display a dynamic list of content for that specific user. You don't want to create a new table of contents for every single user that might sign in. And the REST API allows that. The server client library is a Python module that lives on top of the REST API and will make your life simpler. More about that when we bring Ong back up on stage. And finally, single sign-on. They log into Industrix portal or into your mobile app, or they're just navigating through Purdue's website, and then they navigate to a page that has a visualization on it. By default, they would see a login screen into Tableau Server. That's less than ideal experience, and they might not even know what Tableau Server login is. So through a few pieces of functionality, you can enable single sign-on so that they only see the sign into your page. Now, of course, in chicken noodle soup, you can it's basically a foundation for you to throw all kinds of stuff in there. People throw carrots. People throw peas. My wife was born and raised in Seattle, so of course she has to put kale in our chicken noodle soup. And similarly, for embedded analytics, this is the foundation. But the rest of our developer platform and APIs and integration capabilities might also be important for your specific use case. We won't get too much into all of these, but we will give you some resource on learning more about that, and there's all kinds of sessions later this week that will help you out there. All right, let's build a portal. Here's a very simple portal. It's got a modern-ish look and feel to it. You got your header at top, and the user might log in. And when they do, they are going to be displayed a list of thumbnails of dashboards that they are allowed to see. When they click on one of those, then they will see the interactive dashboard that they can then query, ask questions of, and gain insight. As I said, the first step is the JavaScript API. The JavaScript API allows you to take a single visualization or dashboard that lives on Tableau server and embed it into one of your web pages of your application. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to take that single visualization and put it inside of this web page. Here is the web page. It's blank, it's got a logout screen, it's got a header, and it's got this button off to the side. That blank space in the middle is where we want to put our visualization. And here's the visualization we're just going to put right inside of that web page. Let's hop into the code. Again, there probably is a mix of some developers, non-developers. We're going to keep it high level at the code. So if you're non-developer, hopefully you learn a little bit about what these APIs are for, but don't worry, we'll hop back into some pretty pictures here in a little bit. So here's the HTML page that is the code for what we were just seeing. It's got a lot of stuff going on for controlling how the header and the logout and all that works. But there's only a couple things important here for embedding with the JavaScript API. The first is this empty div. This is how we define where we're going to put our visualization. That's the only requirement. We need to know what its ID is so we can reference it in our JavaScript. The other important thing is this tableau-2.min.js. This is the JavaScript file that is provided to you in your installation of Tableau server. So you simply need to load that in your HTML, which will enable the JavaScript API. You can also load it from public.tableau.com or Tableau Online, or straight from your Tableau server using the same scheme for the URL. Here's our JavaScript. Here is the blank JavaScript. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. The first thing we want to do is when the web page is done loading, we want to load that dashboard inside of our page. To do that, you need three things. The first is the viz div, which I just pointed out. The second is the URL of the viz that we're going to embed. And the third is an options object. There we go. So we get the viz div simply by calling this base JavaScript function called document.getElementById. Remember, we named that empty div myviz. Nope, we called it, yeah, my. Let's remind ourselves. myviz. The second is our URL. The best place to get the URL is right from the viz. Now, you're going to be tempted to grab the URL bar from your browser. That will cause errors. The best thing to do is to click the share button and grab this embed link, which you will then copy and paste into this string. You don't have to, but I like to remove all of these URL arguments to make it look something like this. And finally, our options object is simply us telling Tableau server some options on how we want to embed. For example, we can define the height in the web page. And the width. We can also do things like hide the toolbar. If you don't want your user to use the Tableau toolbar, you can hide this, and it increases that feeling of integration because you're hiding the Tableau Chrome. So we can do that by saying hide toolbar equals true. And similarly, we might want to hide the tabs from the user with hide tabs equals true. There's a variety of options here which you can see in our documentation, but this is just a few of the main ones. So I'll go ahead and hit save here. Hop back over to our web page and hit refresh. And cross our fingers because it's a live code demo, which didn't work. So I'll cheat. Oh, yep. We only have our variables. We haven't actually instantiated the viz object. So once we have those three variables, we pass those into this function called tableau.viz. And we pass those three arguments in. Now we'll hit save and hit refresh. And we still got it wrong, so we'll cheat. Now we have our viz embedded inside of our dashboard. I pointed out this button over here on the right. This button fits the standard for our web application. It's not a Tableau stylized quick filter. And we want this button to be what controls filtering. This can increase the integration look and feel of embedding. And so that's another use case of the JavaScript API. It's not just for embedding, but for doing custom interactions with the viz. So what we want is for this drop-down button to filter to books or to electronics when the user clicks on those options. Right now, all it does is passing an alert. That's this function here. So when the user clicks on that in the HTML, it's calling this function called show and passing in the filter name, which is the name of the field we want to filter on, and the values that the user selected. So to filter, we need to do that on the sheet level. We already have this viz object up above, but to get to the sheet, we need to call viz.getWorkbook. That's one step down. And then every workbook has an active sheet, and that's the one we want to filter on. Now we have our sheet, and so we want to apply the filter. And we do that with this function called applyFilterAsync. We pass three arguments into this filter function. The first is the name of the field we want to filter on, and luckily we were already past that into this function. The second is the value or list of values that you want to filter to. And the last is what's known as a filter update type. If you think about a quick filter, You can have multi-select. So I click on a new value, it adds to what's already there. You can do something similar with filter update type.add. Also, the user can deselect. That's like filter update type remove. But what we want instead is more of kind of like a single value quick filter, which is the user clicks something, I don't care what was there before, just show me books or electronics. And we do that with this filter update type replace. So hit save, refresh our page. Here's our viz, and now when the user clicks books, you can see the viz updates, and when they choose electronics, the same. So this just scratches the surface of the JavaScript API. But it gives you the idea of you have programmatic control of interacting with the visualization. And in embedded analytics, having that integration feel will be great for your users. And it can also allow you to enhance the functionality of Tableau. So we showed you filtering and embedding, but it can do a variety of things. It can do those things that users can already do, filter, select, mark, switch tabs. Why would you want to do that if the user can already do it? Hopefully you get the point, because then you have your application control what's going on in a programmatic manner. It can also respond to user events. Maybe the user clicks on one of those marks, and you want to take that data and throw it somewhere else in your application, or you want to display some information outside of the Tableau viz, but on the right-hand column or up above. You can listen to the user events and find out what they clicked on, or what they filtered to, or what sheet they switched to. And you can also get data from the viz. And this has led to really cool integrations with D3 by taking data from a viz and throwing it over to some auditing system or something like that. People do that for a few reasons. First is custom buttons, as you saw. The second is data integration. So like I said, there might be systems, there might be pages in your application or systems that you use that take data as an input, and you want data from the viz to be that input. And so by querying the data from the viz or responding to user events, you can create these integrations at the data level. And people have done all kinds of crazy stuff. One guy built a game inside that uses Tableau. My colleague, if you remember Clippy from the 90s, he would guide you around in a really annoying way around Microsoft Word. My crazy colleague decided to have Clippy guide you around your dashboard and say, hey, click on this filter. No, you clicked on the wrong thing, guy. So the world is open. Once you start writing your own code on interacting with this dashboard using the JavaScript API, the extension, the possibilities are endless. So you've embedded a single visualization onto a single web page. But remember, when our user logs in, we want them to see a dynamic table of contents, displaying the thumbnails for all of the vizzes they're allowed to see and only the vizzes they're allowed to see. So we need a way to integrate with the content on Tableau server. And that's what the REST API is for. As I said, I'm really excited to bring Ong Gao up on the stage, who works every day on the REST API. Now, at our office, Ong is known as one of the nicest guys. But scouring his Facebook page, I found out that may not be true on the soccer field. The only ever time I saw him make this face, he was working on a bug for like 3 days. Ong, it's soccer. You're supposed to be having fun. Everyone welcome Ong to the stage.
Wow. Thank you, Michael. What a transition. So, hello everyone. My name is Ong. I'm super excited to be here to talk about our second ingredient for our embedding recipe, the Tableau Server REST API and our server client library. So today, I'm going to go over what we can do with these APIs and how it's going to fit in our embedded analytics scenario. And I hope after my introduction, you will feel more confident on using those APIs to facilitate your daily works or even start building your first embedding applications. So first thing, what is REST? REST is an architectural style for web-based communication. It's mostly commonly used as HTTP request and response, so we would like to say it is language agnostic. And so essentially, it can be used in any programming language that you like to implement a REST service. So for those of you hearing the Tableau Server REST API for the very first time, you might be wondering what it is and what it can do. So in short, the Tableau Server REST API lets you programmatically manage and change Tableau Server resources without going through all the UI. So for instance, as a server admin, you can use the REST API to query how many users are there under your projects. You can also use those REST API to publish a workbook or data sources into the Tableau server without going through the Tableau desktop. And more beyond that, you can use REST API to manage all the projects, sites, user permissions, and so on. Now let's take a look at a typical REST request. So here, I have composed a sample request to create a group for a site. So there are 4 major components here. The first one in green is the URL or resources. So here, since we are working on a group, so it is pointing to the group endpoints. It could also be user, be a site, or even a workbook. Basically, all the Tableau resources that we previously mentioned. And the second is the HTTP method. Here, it could be post for create. It could also be get for query, put for update, delete for deletion. And the third one is the Tableau authentication token. And don't freak out, this is not for you to read. And this is the security token that we use to send the request to the Tableau server so the server knows where the request is from. And this token is going to be assigned when the user signs in, and then you should send this token along with all the following requests. And the next is the data payload. It could be in XML or JSON format. So here, I'm using the XML format to indicating the new group name going to be TC17. And you might be thinking this is quite intimidating to create such a request, right? So last year on TC16, we actually announced the Tableau Server Client Library to make this REST API easier to use. So in short, this Tableau Server Client Library is written in Python, and it hides you away from many of the implementation details regarding HTTP request and response handling. It also helps you to remember the authentication token that associated with each of the requests. And so last year when we were announcing it, this is what we said. And I think that the way it captures the essence very well. So let me read it out. So it takes more than 300 lines of code to publish a workbook using REST API, but now using the Tableau Server Client Library, it takes fewer than 20. So from more than 300 lines of code down to 20, that's the beauty of this library. And you can use it for scripting, for building your web application. It's all very simple. And this library has all the object classes that's mapping to each of the REST API endpoints. So all the create, query, update, and delete operation has its own mapping method for all the object classes. So there's no conceptual barrier for a REST API user to switching to using this library. Actually, today, I'm going to using the TSC library to build my demo to show you how easy it is. But before that, let's talk about what REST API can do. So, well, of course, the REST API fits into a lot of scenarios, and here are just a few examples. We can use it for server automation, so the server admin don't have to manually hard code thousands of users' permissions on your Tableau server. You can also use REST API for content auditing, like to ask questions like, how many users are there actively publishing a new workbooks? Or how many workbooks are there under this project? Third, you can use REST API for your workflow integration. Like, for instance, you can use the REST API to download the latest workbook as PDF and then send it through email. And actually, exporting to PDF is a new feature that we just announced on Tableau 10.5. And of course, REST API plays a big part in embedded analytics. So here are a few more examples specifically for embedded analytics. We can use REST API to synchronize all the user information from your existing platform into the new deployed Tableau server. And also, you can use REST API to publish template workbooks or data sources so that to bootstrap the new user so their onboard experience will be better. And third is, for instance, your server has tons of resources or contents and then lots of users. You might want to build a custom portal just to show the workbooks and views that's mission critical to the user. And also, you can build the customized portal to match the look and feel of your company branding. So we call it dynamic table of contents. This is how the portal looks like, as Michael just showed you. And here, let's see how we're going to get there with REST API. So there are 3 simple steps. First, we're going to use REST API to sign in the user. Second, for the signed in user, we're going to query the workbooks that's available to him or her. And third, for each of the workbooks and views, we're going to query its thumbnail and then send it back to the front end. Now, let's hop onto the demo. So here, I have built a simple web app, and here's the login page for the customized portal. First, I'm going to log in as my twin brother, who is working in Tableau as a sales consultant. As a sales consultant, certainly he should only be able to see the workbooks that's related to our sales data. And there you go. So there are 5 views that's all related to our sales performance. And each of the thumbnail is actually a link, and then you can click them, and then that should bring you towards the embedded viz, just as Michael showed you. And now let's log out and log back in as an admin user. As an admin, certainly he should access all the views that's available on this server. And since it has more content, so it might take a longer time. So now there it is. And you can also switch to the different pages, and that's going to re-query for the thumbnails for that page. And you can also see, like, on the top banner, we are matching the branding with our Tableau conference. So this is the custom portal. Now let's hop onto the code to see how the Tableau Server Client library that made all this possible. So here is a simple web app that I built using Python Flask. And there are only 2 major functions. First is the login. And once the user logs in, they're going to be rerouted to the second function called query views with thumbnails. Let's take a look at the login first. If you remember, we have 3 steps. So first is to log in the user. And there are three minor steps here just in order to sign in the user. So first, we're going to create the Tableau authentication object with the username and the password. And second, we're going to create a Tableau server instance object, and which pointing to the host URL that's pointing to my local Tableau server for now. And also, we are indicating we're using the REST API server version. We're using the REST API version that's matching to our server. So now we have the server instance. We can finally call the server auth sign in to actually sign in the user. As I mentioned earlier, once the user signed in, the authentication token will be returned from the server and going to be associated with this server object. So all the future requests, you don't have to deal with the authentication token again. So once the user signed in, we're going to do the second step, which is to query the views available for that user. So it's just a simple one line. You can query the views for that user, and for the return value, you're going to get a list of the views that's available for this user. And last step is for each of the views in that list, we're gonna query its thumbnail as the populate image here, and that's gonna download the thumbnail, bind it with with each of the view items, and then send it back towards the front end, which would handle all the rendering work. So as you can see, with just a few lines of code, you can have the user signed in, query all the workbooks that belongs to them, and then build the thumbnail and the dashboard. It's all very simple, right? So now let's hop back onto the slides. So let's do a quick recap for the 3 steps. Sign in, query the workbooks, and then query the thumbnail. And so now when the user signing into your web app, and they're gonna be asked to enter the credentials, right? And then they're gonna see the dashboard of all the available views for him. And when the user click on the link, because all the workbooks and views are hosted on Tableau server, so they're gonna be asked to enter the credentials again. Certainly, this is not a very good user experience. So we're gonna talk about single sign-on. But before that, look what I found on Facebook. So since Michael made fun of me, look at him. He said, I am serious. I think he's angry. And I know why, because at least I am playing a real sport. All right, back to you, Michael.
When will people believe that Frisbee is a real sport? So as Ong said, as Ong said, we've embedded a single visualization inside of a web page. We've given the user a dynamic table of contents. But when they log in, if they aren't currently logged into Tableau server, what will they see? We need a way to pass credentials from your web application to Tableau server. So we know who's logged in case there's any row-level security inside of the dashboard, and mostly so they don't have to type in their credentials again. There's basically 2 main ways to do this. The first is this bucket of features, SAML, OpenID, Kerberos. These are essentially industry standard technologies and features that if you are already using these for your company or inside of your web application, then you can easily leverage the investment you've already made in standing those up. If you have not, then there's really no point to use these. So you're building your web application, you decide, oh, have we standardized on SAML or OpenID or Kerberos? If so, then you simply need to configure Tableau server to use those as their authentication mechanism. And that's just done in the configuration dialog that every admin should be used to. If you're not using one of those 3 things, if you're using some bespoke authentication mechanism or some standard that wasn't in that list that we don't yet have a configuration to, you can use what's known as trusted tickets. Trusted tickets is a Tableau-specific feature for single sign-on. So this isn't an industry standard term or anything. And it allows you to pass user information from your application to Tableau server with a simple post request. Because you're just doing this over a simple HTTP request and a little bit of dynamic JavaScript, that means you can integrate with literally any other authentication mechanism. Now, there's kind of two parts of getting this up and running. The first is the setup. And in this one, you're defining what are the trusted IP addresses. If a request comes from one of these IP addresses and says, I have user Becky here, then I can trust those IP addresses. Otherwise, I cannot trust that request. And the second part of using trusted authentication or trusted tickets is the process that happens every new time you want to authenticate a user to a specific viz. And that's what this is for. If you go to our documentation and look up trusted authentication, this is what you'll see. And a lot of people are scared off a little bit by this diagram, so I'm going to step you through it. There's kind of three pieces to the story, three different sets of machines. The first is your client's browser. They navigated to a specific page in your web application. The second, in the bottom left, is the machine or set of machines that run your web application. And the third is Tableau server. So let me step you through this and tell the story. The client navigates to a specific page. In the case of the portal we just built, they clicked on one of those thumbnails. It loads the page that has the embedded JavaScript. They're essentially saying, I want a viz. The web and the name of the viz, the URL of the viz, might look something like this. It's the URL of your Tableau server /views / the name of the view. The web application then needs to turn around and tell Tableau server via a post request that a specific user wants a viz. Erica wants some viz. The post request is pretty simple. It's to the URL of Tableau server /trusted, and the payload is just the name of your user passed in through this username. Now notice what's not here, their password or the name of the viz. Tableau server will then ask itself two questions. Do I trust this IP address? That is it in the list of IP addresses that we defined as trusted IP address? And is Erica registered as a user in Tableau server? If so, Tableau server will say, here's a ticket. And that ticket looks something like this. It's a long string of characters. Now your web application will turn back to the client, and through dynamic JavaScript, will tell the client, here, use this ticket. The client now has everything they need, the URL of their viz and a ticket, and they will then, this isn't a manual step, the client's browser through the dynamic JavaScript will then turn back to Tableau server and say, hey, I want that viz, and by the way, I have a ticket, I don't have to sign in again. The way you use that ticket is by inserting it into the URL. So earlier we had the URL of Tableau server /views /requested view name. Now we have the URL of Tableau server /trusted the ticket that we just received /views /view name. And if Tableau server recognizes that as a legitimate unexpired ticket, it'll say, here you go, here's your viz, no sign-in required. Now, we draw that diagram with 6 distinct steps simply because those are technically all of the HTTP requests that happen along the way. But I really like to think of it as kind of 2 or 3 steps. The first is the web app says, hey, I need a ticket for my user with a post request. And the second is that the server returns the ticket. And then the third is that through that dynamic JavaScript, the web app simply loads the viz with the ticket inserted. So that is it for the three main ingredients of web authoring. I'd like to leave you with a few action items and places to find out more information. Oh, that is going. Okay. Oh, this changed literally yesterday. So the first one should say tableau.com/developer, single. It's a new landing page and a new single-stop shop for everything about our developer platform, our integration capabilities, and our APIs. You can also go to github.com/Tableau for all of our open source code, as well as samples for all of the APIs that you saw today and all of the APIs that make up our developer platform. Now, inside of GitHub, we have this relatively new embedded analytics playbook. This thing will guide you at a high level, step by step, through everything you need to know to accomplish an embedded analytics deployment. It'll give you sample code and links to samples and links to videos for the JavaScript API, for the REST API, and everything in between. Now, this is supposed to animate, and it is not. So maybe if I escape, show this. We also want to encourage you to go to some of the other sessions this week. People will take a deeper dive into these APIs, and here are some of them. Can you just flip back and forth those last two? Oh, is it going? Oh, it's actually animating now? Okay. So that's it for embedded analytics. Hopefully, you've learned why you might want to do this, which APIs and integration capabilities you need to learn more about, and have access to resources where you can dive deeper. We have about 5 minutes for Q&A, so there's a microphone over here. That's probably the easiest way. Let's see if anyone actually goes over there. Here, as people do that, I'll just call them out, but please line up at the microphone, and then I'll get questions.
You mentioned earlier that you don't have to set up all of your users that are going to be accessing the embedded in the portal in Tableau Server. However, if you're limiting what they have access to see within Tableau Server, does that require them to be set up in Tableau Server?
Yeah, so the question is, I said earlier that you don't have to set up all your users in Tableau Server, but what if you want to restrict what they can see and that kind of thing? Sorry if I implied that they aren't going to have a username in Tableau Server. They absolutely do. They need to have that for a single sign-on. They need to do it to have access to the correct vises in the table of contents. But the manual way of adding users to Tableau Server is to go into the admin page and start typing like, okay, I need a user Joe, and this is his password, and I need a user Amy, and this is her password, and so on and so forth. The REST API allows you to avoid that manual step by making a request to add a new user. So a new user signs up for your portal. You can then turn around, have a REST API script that adds them automatically to Tableau Server. So, and the follow-up question is, isn't that only if you're using local authentication? So I guess there's a few ways to authenticate. One is you might be syncing with SAML, as we kind of briefly mentioned. SAML is the authentication mechanism, but that's separate than the user management piece, which is getting users in. To get users in, if you're using SAML, you still have to use the REST API. If you're using Active Directory, then you're really just syncing with Active Directory to get users in. Let's go to the mic over here.
So like in that Purdue case, I have a visualization just open to the world. I don't care who the user is. So is that like to Purdue thing, like a trusted ticket method then, or how?
Yeah, so that was a little bit of a hand-wavy part of the Purdue. So they wanted everyone to see every viz as opposed to like who's logging in. What they do is they use, if you have hardware-based licensing for Tableau Server, you can turn on a feature that's known as guest user. And it simply says if somebody goes directly to a viz, just show it to them. If you've given access to that dashboard to guest user, so that's what they've done. That really only applies in the rare use case, although common for public institutions, of we have data that we want everyone in the world to see. But if that is the case, you can use guest user authentication. You can skip the step of making sure they're a user inside of Tableau Server and doing trusted tickets. Does that answer the question?
Yeah.
So just look into guest user functionality. That'll answer that question.
Hi. One of the challenges we have with our portal is the linking functionality, like when you schedule a report or if you do the copy link, will direct back to the server instead of to the portal. And I'm wondering if you have a solution around that.
If you use subscriptions or something like that?
Yeah. Like if someone schedules a report, so they're getting an email and then there's a link in there, takes them to the server rather than to our authenticated portal.
Yes.
And we can't really use the server-wide redirect because it's a shared resource, but
Oh,
when
that was
is
going
that
to be my
going to be your
answer.
solution?
So the answer is you can configure what the URL that gets pasted in.
Correct.
And so if you have some kind of proxy server or your web application just uses the right URLs,
Right.
and then it shows you the embedded link. But if you don't want, that is server-wide. So
Okay.
I'm not sure what we would do to build something that wasn't server-wide, but
Okay.
currently that's the
Okay,
only thing you
cool.
can do.
Thanks.
Hi, are your developer websites and portals and everything, do you have resources for going the opposite direction, being able to embed external content within Tableau?
Like web applications
Yeah, we
inside
have
of
an
your
existing
dashboards?
web application that also has visualizations and other data, and we were exploring methods of getting that into Tableau that's being distributed to customers.
Yes, so that's what the brand new extensions API that was announced this morning is all about.
Okay.
Taking applications and putting them inside of dashboards and then integrating with the visualization. Is that similar to what you're going for?
More or less, I didn't know if you had like an iframe embedding sort of thing, or if that was exclusive to the extensions API.
Yep, that's the extensions API. It's in developer preview as of 2 hours ago, so check that out.
Okay, thank you.
Hi. Can I make a dashboard in Tableau Desktop and use it on Portal?
On what?
On Portal, custom Portal? By making a
Can you
dashboard in
build a
Tableau
new
Desktop?
dashboard or visualization inside of the portal?
Yeah, can I make a dashboard by using Tableau Desktop and just publish it to the portal?
Yeah, so if you take, I'm going to give you an answer and you can tell me whether I'm on the right track. So if you take a dashboard and you build it in Tableau Server and then you publish it, you build it in Tableau Desktop, you publish it to Tableau Server. If you've set up your web application to give you a dynamic display of users, of content, the way that Ong showed us how, then that new dashboard will show up to the users who have access to it. So that's really management of permissions and making sure your REST API integration is.
So that means I don't have to buy so many licenses for Tableau, have one license, publish it to Portal, and let everyone access through guest. So 2 are enough, correct?
Does everyone who has access to the dashboard need to have a username in Tableau Server? Is that the question?
Yeah, everyone send a request and through guest.
Yeah.
I'll go to Tableau Server and enable guest. So let my organization say has about I'm from Samsung, I have about 1,000 people. So let them use guest to access it. So I just need to purchase one license to make the dashboards.
If you're using guests, then you can publish the dashboard, and you publish the dashboard, and as you do that, maybe use the REST API to set or projects to make sure that dashboard is accessible by the guest user. And then similarly, you could use the REST API inside of that dynamic display of contents to just display everything that's available to the guest user.
Correct. So this is enabling us to reduce the cost by only signing up for 2 licenses.
Yep.
Thank you.
That assumes, right, the limitation of guest user is you're opening it up to everyone in the world, right?
Yeah,
And they don't have access to
but
the
we will
rest
take
of
care of
Tableau
those
server.
access levels at our portal end, maybe.
Yeah.
Sure, thanks.
Lama, your sales department probably doesn't like you telling them this.
So guest user assumes that you have hardware-based licensing, which already gives you access to unlimited amount of users, right? So that assumes you're on hardware-based licensing as opposed to user-based licensing. You're already paying a premium to have hardware-based licensing. There's no like low entry level into hardware-based licensing. And you don't have access to guest user if you only have, say, 2 Tableau server per user, named users. A guest can't do anything but view a viz, yeah.
Just to follow up on the extensions API that you talked about, you can use that to actually set the data of a viz. So typical to what you would do with D3 or something, I've got a JSON document and I want to set that data into a viz that I've created in a Tableau workbook. I'd potentially be able to do that.
By setting data, do you mean kind of just like
Like my web
filtering?
application has the JSON document already and I just want to pass it to the viz. I can't do that now.
Well,
Because I have all of my permissions and things in my web app for that user. I don't have to have a user in the Tableau, on the Tableau server that I have to sync up with the roles and stuff like that. I could just pass that data and say, here's the viz, here you go.
so not really. I mean, you could do some kind of write-back scenario where the viz is querying some database, and then your extension could write back to that database. But you will always have to define when you build your viz what data source are we querying off of. There are there's more trainings, tutorial sessions on the extensions API where you can find out kind of more of that write-back scenario.
Yeah, we've kind of done like a backwards way through the web data connector.
Yep.
Past the ticket and stuff like that. But it would be nice since the application already has the data to just say, here it is, now just render the viz.
Yeah. So
So, feature
not in the
request.
extensions API. All right. There's a question here. So that's really the question for anyone who's curious is if you were going to do like 100 users, how can you avoid 100 HTTP requests? That's really the nature of the REST protocol, is you make individual requests for an individual resource. The server client library simplifies that code, but you're still making all those requests. So, yeah. Well, the same as if you went, adding 1,000 users via script, I don't imagine to take too long. I've done like 100 or so, and it was a few seconds. So a few minutes, and if, you're not doing that every moment of the day, adding 1,000 users, hopefully. If you are, that's awesome that you have so many new users. Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. You can do some of that querying with the JavaScript API. I don't know if it does it need to be prior to the load time. Okay. So we've definitely thought about that for the REST API, but not today.